Hi, I'm Anthony DeStefano, and I'm standing on the Terrazza Brunelleschi overlooking Il Duomo, which is the main cathedral in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, Firenze, or Florence as it's known in English. Florence is the capital city of the Tuscany region of Italy, and it's known as the birthplace of the Renaissance. It was the center of artistic creativity during the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries, the center of painting, sculpture, and architecture, and for a while, even literature. This was the home of the great Dante, who wrote the Divine Comedy, and Botticelli, and Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo, and Raphael. They all lived here or worked here. And that's why we're here today, too, because on this program, we're going to discuss the subject of work in heaven. That's right, work. After all, we've already talked a little bit about what heaven might look like, but what exactly are we going to do once we get there? Does all activity and creativity stop when we die, or does it perhaps continue in some way? We'll talk about that and much more on this episode of A Travel Guide to Heaven.
This is a special pre-boarding announcement. All passengers traveling to our final destination today have been awarded a lifetime's worth of frequent flyer miles, entitling them to automatic upgrades to first class. Since the flight is very full, we ask that you check the following items at the gate: gloominess, stuffiness, cynicism, pessimism, intellectual snobbery, self-righteousness, and prejudice against God and religion. Please be assured you can retrieve this property upon your return, if you wish.
Okay, so we've made it to this super resort called heaven. The question for us now is, once we arrive, what are we going to do there? What kind of activities will be at our disposal there? And here we come to the single biggest obstacle to imagining life in heaven. Not only is it difficult for us to envision what we might do in the afterlife, but we've been so programmed with negative associations that we don't even want to think about it. People say they believe heaven is a place of incredible happiness, but deep down I think they're a little afraid it's going to be, well, boring. Since we were children, most of us have pictured heaven as a place where disembodied spirits float around in the clouds all day, playing harps and singing in choirs, forever and ever and ever. Let's be honest, that's not a very exciting prospect for too many people. Then there are the things we say about the afterlife. Phrases that have become so predominant in our society that they actually turn us off to the idea of heaven. Chief among these is rest in peace. Now, rest in peace is a very old and beautiful way of saying goodbye to the people we love, but it's also extremely misunderstood. When you hear it, certain images naturally pop into your head. Sleep, for example, a very, very long sleep. But that's not what rest in peace means. Rest is not just what we do to refresh our bodies when we get tired from activity. Rest is also a state we arrive at after we achieve something. When a runner finishes a marathon, he comes to a state of rest, which means that he has completed the race successfully and no longer has to continue running. He may also need a rest, but that's besides the point. When we speak about the faithfully departed resting, we are primarily focusing on the first meaning of the word. These people have successfully completed their life's marathon. They've finished the race. They've achieved the purpose for which they were born, to be with God. The word peace also has several meanings. Yes, it can signify quiet inactivity and relaxation, but that's not what we mean when we apply it to the dead. Peace can also mean freedom from anxiety, freedom from stress, freedom from suffering. The very first words Christ uttered to his disciples after he rose from the dead were, "Peace be with you." At another time, he told them, "I leave you peace, my peace I give you." Peace was something he bestowed on them. It was a gift that enabled them to do all they had to do without inordinate fear and stress. Now, do you think the apostles spent their time relaxing and lounging around Palestine? Was Christ himself a sedate, easygoing type of person? Obviously not. In fact, the exact opposite is true. Christ, the creator and giver of peace, was one of the most energetic men who ever lived. In 3 short years, he crisscrossed Israel, performing miracles, challenging authority, chasing money changers out of the temple, and teaching thousands of people how they should live. In the process, he changed the world forever. Likewise, the apostles, who were among the greatest recipients of Christ's peace, ceaselessly worked to spread the gospel. They traveled the known globe and endured every kind of suffering, from being stoned to being scourged to being shipwrecked. Peace, in the Christian understanding, does not necessarily mean inactivity. It also means freedom from anxiety so that you can be effectively active. Thus, the words, "rest in peace," which are carved on so many tombstones, do not only mean that the deceased can finally relax after a busy life of work and worry and hardship. They also mean that our departed friends and relatives have successfully completed the first stage of their life and are now ready to take on a more fulfilling, active life in heaven. Listen, when we get to heaven, we won't know what to do first. As someone once said about Paris in the springtime, the only problem will be deciding where to be happiest. Heaven is going to be a vast wonderland of activities. We'll have instantaneous access to anywhere we want to go because our bodies will be completely at the service of our minds. How would you like to take a day trip to Venus? How about a tour of the Andromeda Galaxy? How about spending a weekend in ancient Rome? How about camping out with the dinosaurs? Don't be afraid to let your imagination run wild. St. Augustine said, "We will have such bodies that we will be able to go any place, where, and when we want." If you want to understand heaven, you've got to break out of your current pattern of thinking and expand your horizons. And this applies to the people we're going to see too. How would you like to play ball with Joe DiMaggio? Or discuss literature with Jane Austen or William Shakespeare? Or take art lessons from Michelangelo or piano lessons from Mozart? Get the idea? As long as the people we just mentioned make it to heaven, and we certainly hope and pray that they do, they'll be available for us to talk to, work with, get to know better, and become friends with. All the great saints we know from the Bible will be there. We'll be able to meet our first parents, Adam and Eve. We'll be able to talk to the Old Testament heroes like Moses and David. We'll be able to have lunch with St. Peter's and Paul. We'll be able to sit down under a sprawling tree in the cool of the afternoon with the Blessed Virgin Mary. Hopefully, all our own ancestors will be there too. How would you like to meet your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather and find out all the details of your family history? And, as we saw in the last episode, there will be millions of angels in heaven. We'll be able to interact with these pure spiritual creatures and ask them at exactly which moments in our life they helped us most. There's no reason why we won't be able to form close friendships with them, learning from them, and perhaps teaching them as well. Best of all, God Himself will be there, and we'll be able to glorify Him and worship Him and enjoy His fellowship forever. Now, of course, we shouldn't get the idea that heaven is only for fast-paced sightseeing and friendly chatter. I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for the simple pleasures in life too. Hiking through the mountains, horseback riding along the shore, taking a brisk walk through the park, reading a really good book by the fireside with a hot cup of tea, or enjoying a pleasant meal with your friends. And there'll be so much to learn. Our God is an infinite being. No one could ever fully comprehend all there is to know about Him because there's simply too much to take in. Someone once compared it to trying to put all the ocean's water in a sand hole at the beach. It can't be done. God just won't fit completely into our minds. That's true now, and it will be in heaven too. The same can also be said for His creation. We may indeed be able to master vast quantities of information about different aspects of life and nature and people and the universe, but we'll never be able to grasp it all. The reason is that creation itself is a reflection of God. And since He's always going to remain a transcendent mystery to us, His creation will be somewhat unfathomable too. The great news about this, I think, is that it will give us the opportunity to study and learn forever. Do you want to take up Greek or Italian? How about the violin or cello? Would you like to brush up on your geography or learn more about history or architecture? In heaven, you'll have the time to do all these things and more. except without any of the stress and struggle we experience on earth. And let's not forget work. Work in heaven? Relax. Let me explain what I think about this. Working in heaven will be more satisfying and more exciting than anything we've ever done in this life. In fact, I believe it will be a key part of what makes us happy for eternity. First, we have to understand that work is not a human invention. It's from God. Even if we had all the money in the world, we'd still need to engage in some form of labor because that need has been programmed into us by our Creator. Go back to the book of Genesis, when God created the earth, the water, the sky, the animals, and the first human beings, and then rested on the seventh day. What do you think he was taking a rest from? The act of original creation was work. God could have chosen to create the world in a nanosecond. Instead, he took his time. Moreover, he made sure to tell us that it was a chronological progression with a beginning, middle, and end. At the conclusion of the process, he even let us know that he took a day off. And then, even before the fall, God directed Adam to work in the Garden of Eden by cultivating it. Later on, we see Christ himself working as a humble carpenter. And later still, we learn that St. Paul, the greatest evangelist of all time, flatly refused to live on charity, only accepting the food he was given as payment for his work as a tent maker. In these examples and hundreds more, God is trying to teach us a lesson. Work is sacred. Work is virtuous. Work is holy. Now, does this mean we're going to have jobs in heaven? Listen, no one can say for sure. We know that in heaven, there won't be a need for many of the goods and services we have here on earth. For example, there won't be any suffering in heaven. So we won't need hospitals or doctors or nurses or ambulance drivers or therapists or pharmacists. There won't be any crime in heaven. So we won't need any police or lawyers or judges or wardens. And since no one ever dies in heaven, we won't need any funeral parlors, undertakers, or coroners. Thank God. If you work at any of the aforementioned jobs, please be advised you're going to have to change professions. On the other hand, there are such things as basic human needs. Given how God has made us, we'll always have the need for beauty, growth, learning, love, and relationships. We need them right now, and we'll need them after our millionth year in heaven. Of course, God can provide anything he wants instantaneously to us, but I firmly believe that in God's heavenly plan, there will always be artists, teachers, musicians, and performers. Books will be written and read, public structures will be built and utilized, works of art will be created and admired, concerts will be performed and attended. But the difference between work in heaven and the kind that we do now is that our heavenly labor will never be drudgery. In heaven, the work we do will seem like play because we'll truly love doing it. At the same time, it'll be something that expands us as human beings and somehow expands heaven itself. Look, one of the keys to finding happiness on earth is to make sure we're constantly growing. If we don't, we're doomed to feel dead and empty at the end of each day. This is a law of the universe as immutable as the law of gravity. It's no accident that God built us this way. He knew that by giving us a psychology that demands expansion, he was providing us with a source of never-ending excitement. When we're in the mode of improving, our life is full of possibilities. Possibilities for better relationships, better finances, better health, better times. Well, in heaven, I think the same kind of dynamic will still apply. Not exactly the same, of course, but something similar. The work we do in heaven and the growth we achieve will be profoundly fulfilling to us at the deepest level of our being. The second day of any vacation is usually the most exciting one for me. All the aggravation of the first day, rushing to the airport, waiting for luggage, getting checked into the hotel, unpacking and ironing, is done with, and you're finally ready to start having fun. There's nothing quite like the thrill of anticipation, and that's what the second day is all about. The week ahead holds unlimited potential for adventure, and each successive day is a challenge of enjoyment. As you get to the end of the trip, however, one of two things usually happens. Either a degree of boredom sets in and you actually begin to look forward to coming home, or you absolutely dread the prospect of returning to reality. Vacations come too seldom and go much too quickly. I think we have similar feelings when it comes to heaven. On the one hand, eternity seems too good to be true. After all, how could anyone live forever? If there's one thing we're absolutely sure of in life, it's that everything and everyone dies. The very idea of a place where death doesn't exist, where the good times keep rolling on forever, is so alien to us that it's almost impossible to imagine it. On the other hand, if we do accept the idea of eternity, how can we be sure it will be eternal happiness? After all, human beings get tired of everything, even the good things in life. It's just our nature. Which brings us to the question of time, one of the most intriguing, complex, frustrating, and difficult subjects under the sun. Now, to start, let's get one thing very clear. There will be time in heaven, at least in some form. We know that for a fact because we know that after the general resurrection, we'll experience heaven in both a spiritual and material way. Well, materiality implies both time and space. You see, there's going to be trees and rivers and cities and human beings in heaven. There's going to be activity there too. Humans will be moving around and trees will be stirring in the breeze and rivers will be flowing. Thus, there will be changes in heaven from one moment to the next. Since time is simply the measurement of change, some version of it must exist there. This is an important point because there are some people who argue that time doesn't exist in heaven, that eternity is really just awareness, and that there's no progression of moments in the afterlife. Well, that might be the way it is for God in His divine nature, and even perhaps for the angels. But it's different for us material creatures. As long as we have bodies that can move, we'll be able to time those movements. How we experience time in heaven will certainly be different from how we experience it now, but it's still going to be recognizable and similar to time on earth. It will be transformed and renewed for sure, but not destroyed. The only thing we know for sure that will be destroyed in the afterlife is death, and, of course, the activity by which death was brought about, sin. This elimination of death is going to result in a fundamental shift in the way we feel about time. Right now, even if we manage to adopt a positive attitude about aging, we can't help but feel that time is the ultimate villain. No matter how much we try to slow him down, he marches on relentlessly and forces us to march with him to a destination that is always the same: deterioration, death, and decay. The specter of death is always hanging over us in some way. It colors our thinking and it taints our experiences in ways we can't fully grasp. Anytime something good comes to an end, we feel sadness. Not only because that particular pleasure is finished, but because it's a reminder of our own mortality. God makes sure to provide us with plenty of these reminders because He knows that if He doesn't, we'll be content to live in denial, moving blindly and irresponsibly toward every pleasure, paying little attention to Him and the things that He's said are important to us. Not only does He allow people and animals we love to die, but He puts other less traumatic signposts along the way too. He allows days to end, seasons of the year to end, vacations to end, meals to end, holidays and family gatherings to end, good books to end. All these things end because God wants to teach us a big lesson, namely that we're going to end one day too, maybe sooner than we think. And He wants us to be fully prepared for that eventuality. But it won't be like that in heaven. We won't have that oppressive cloud hanging over our heads. It's impossible to repeat enough. There is no death in heaven. Now, once we've acknowledged what Christianity teaches about life everlasting, and once we've tried a few times to imagine what that length of time is going to feel like, we still got the problem of boredom to contend with. How are we going to manage to be happy for 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, or 1,000,000,000 years? Won't we run out of things to do? The best way to deal with this problem, of course, is simply to trust God. After all, if God is so powerful and intelligent that he can create the universe and put the planets in their orbits, he's certainly smart enough to provide enough things for us to do for all eternity. But human beings are weak. We want to know how God intends to do this. The reason why we're afraid of getting bored with certain pleasures in heaven is because we've already had the experience of getting bored with them on earth. What we don't realize is that we've got things reversed. We try to do fun things in our life now because we want to generate good feelings. When we become bored with something, it's not because we're tired of the good feelings. It's because we're tired of the specific thing that we're doing. It's just not generating those good feelings anymore. So we try other things. They work for a while, and then we tire of them as well. If we do too much of anything, we get tired of it. But we never get tired of the feeling we're trying to produce. Have you ever gotten tired of happiness? Have you ever gotten tired of feeling fulfilled? Have you ever gotten bored with smiling or laughing? Of course not. In heaven, we won't have to try to produce those feelings artificially. We'll already have them to the fullest possible extent. We'll have them just by virtue of being with God. Any pleasures we experience will be like icing on the cake. For example, we'll take tremendous pleasure in flying through the air, in visiting great cities, in playing with the animals, in exploring the universe, and meeting famous people from history, and developing our God-given talents. But we won't need to do any of these things in order to be happy. So we'll never get deathly bored with them and move on to something else out of a sheer desire to satiate a yearning. Happiness will be our starting point. And what about boredom with existence itself, with all that time we'll have on our hands? We've already said that in heaven, both human beings and the earth are going to be renewed and transformed. Well, the same is going to be true for time. And its transformation is going to eliminate any possibility of boredom. How can we be so sure? God's already given us some powerful clues. We've all seen them before, but we may not have identified them for what they are, glimpses of our life to come. Have you ever been so deeply involved in your work or in some activity that you lost all track of time? Why does the clock seem to go so fast at some points and so slow at others? And why, at other times, does it stop moving completely? Have you ever had the experience of standing before a natural wonder of the world, like the Grand Canyon? A spectacle so awesome in scope and breathtaking in beauty that you couldn't feel or think about anything else? When everything in life, including time, ceased to exist, and there was only that one vision before you? Have you ever looked into the eyes of the person you loved most in the whole world and felt the same way? At those special moments, it's hard to tell how much time actually passes. In a very real way, time stands still. We call those experiences transcendent because they go beyond all quantifiable limits. Heaven is going to be like that. The sight of God will be much more heart-stopping than any canyon. Therefore, our experience of time will be much more transcendent. Listen, how does a child feel at the end of the school semester when school lets out and summer vacation begins? How long does the summer seem to that child? I don't know about you, but when I was a boy, summer vacations were joyously endless. Looking back now, I can't believe they lasted only 2 months. They seemed to go on forever. To be sure, the days themselves flew by, but that's because I was enjoying myself so much. The scope of the summer itself was vast, the end always so far away in the distance. The reason is that I was doing things that I loved to do, like playing with my friends. And I had no real burdens or responsibilities weighing down on my shoulders. As we get older, though, the situation often reverses. We get jobs that aren't fulfilling, and our responsibilities multiply geometrically. The result is that a flip-flop occurs in the way we perceive time. The days themselves go slowly because of boredom and drudgery, and yet the years seem to pass at the speed of light. Well, eternity in heaven is going to be a throwback to when we were children. It will be like summer vacation all over again, or perhaps the second day of a really great vacation. We'll have no burdens weighing us down, no boredom or frustration, no feelings of pressure, just the thrill of anticipation for all the wonderful years that lie ahead. In this case, though, it really will be an eternity ahead of us, and not just some childish illusion. We're here at Terrazza Brunelleschi in Florence having a wonderful lunch. And the reason why we end each program with a meal isn't just because we like to eat, which we do. It's because we want to make the point that heaven is not some cloudy, gray, boring place. It's a banquet, a feast with family and friends and music and life and laughter and an abundance of joy. Now, in today's show, we talked a little bit about activity and time in heaven. Pretty interesting stuff. But the next time we meet, we're going to discuss something even more incredible. We're going to talk about the best part of heaven. We're finally going to get to the highlight of our trip. Until then, this is Anthony DeStefano wishing you health, happiness, and heaven too. Salute.